The cabin buzzed with the kind of pre-flight hum that could only come from a packed commercial jet. Elon Musk sat inconspicuously in seat 24A, leaning against the window, a red MAGA hat perched slightly askew on his head. It wasn't a statement, it was an experiment. He liked testing boundaries, observing reactions, and occasionally stirring the pot. This, however, was shaping up to be more entertaining than he'd planned. The murmurs started small, a ripple of whispers that moved through the cabin like an electric current. "Is that guy seriously wearing that hat?" someone muttered. A man in business casual 2 rows ahead turned to glare, while a college-aged woman across the aisle snapped a photo, her phone angled slyly in his direction. Elon noticed but remained silent, his lips curling into the faintest smirk. The tension escalated when the passenger in 24B, a stocky middle-aged man with a briefcase wedged under the seat, leaned closer. "Hey man, do you really have to wear that? It's, kind of offensive." Elon shrugged, his voice light. "It's just a hat." "But it's that hat," the man insisted, his tone sharpening. "You're making people uncomfortable." Before Elon could respond, a flight attendant appeared, summoned by another passenger pressing the call button. Her smile faltered as her eyes landed on the hat. She bent down slightly, her tone polite but firm. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to remove that hat. Our airline has a strict no political symbols policy." Elon tilted his head, genuinely curious. "A policy against hats?" "Against anything that could be seen as politically divisive," she clarified, though her words lacked conviction. The murmurs behind her grew louder, emboldened by her intervention. "It's just fabric and thread," Elon said, his voice calm but carrying a note of mischief. "Shouldn't actions matter more than accessories?" Her professional demeanor wavered. "Sir, please. We don't want any trouble." At that moment, a younger passenger stood up from a few rows back, his face flushed with indignation. "If he doesn't take it off, I'm getting off this plane. I'm not flying with someone like him." The cabin buzzed louder, passengers now openly debating whether the hat constituted an act of aggression. Elon remained seated, his expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate slowness, he unbuckled his seatbelt, stood up, and stretched lazily. "No need to argue," he said with a grin. "I'll leave." The passengers around him seemed momentarily stunned by his compliance, but the silence broke as someone shouted, "Good riddance!" Elon chuckled, grabbed his small carry-on, and sauntered down the aisle, ignoring the sea of eyes following his every step. As he stepped off the jet bridge and into the terminal, he pulled out his phone. The notifications were already piling up. The scene had been recorded and uploaded to social media within minutes. One clip showed the flight attendant's strained expression, another captured the passengers shouting indignantly, and a third zoomed in dramatically on the now infamous red hat. The captions ranged from, "MAGA man disrupts flight," to, "Airline enforces political neutrality." Within an hour, hashtags like #Hatgate and #Freedom to Fly were trending. Elon skimmed through the comments, his amusement growing. "Typical Musk chaos," he muttered under his breath, tucking the hat into his carry-on. What no one on that plane or in the comments section knew was that the airline enforcing its no politics policy so rigidly was, in fact, one of Elon's own companies. This wasn't just a random experiment. It was a calculated move, a test of societal limits and a gauge of how deeply symbols could affect people. The absurdity of being kicked off his own flight wasn't lost on him, and the public outrage was already forming the perfect setup for his next move. By the time he reached the private car waiting for him outside the airport, the incident was on every major news outlet. Anchors debated whether the airline's policy was justified, while political commentators dissected the social implications of hat culture. Elon listened absently to the chatter, scrolling through more comments as his driver navigated the highway. The irony of the situation wasn't just entertaining, it was illuminating. People were outraged over a hat. A symbol. A few words stitched onto fabric had the power to unite, divide, and spark chaos. Elon's grin widened. He already knew what he was going to do next. The uproar was impossible to ignore. Within hours of the incident, the internet had splintered into factions, each armed with hashtags, memes, and outrage. Some defended the airline, praising their commitment to neutrality and order. Others condemned them, accusing the company of overreach and stifling personal expression. Elon Musk, however, remained curiously silent, fueling speculation. The silence was part of the plan. Elon knew the power of timing. He allowed the discourse to brew, every thread of the conversation deepening the cultural divide over something as trivial as a hat. News outlets scrambled to track the mysterious passenger's identity, with some theorizing he might be a political activist, or even a provocateur planted by competitors. Elon's name never surfaced, and that was just how he wanted it, for now. At the company's headquarters, the airline's executives were panicking. The PR team was overwhelmed with calls, the legal department was drafting carefully worded statements, and the CEO, technically Musk himself, though he rarely attended day-to-day meetings, was conspicuously absent. The acting COO nervously fielded reporters, dodging questions about whether the "no politics" policy needed reevaluation. Meanwhile, Elon watched everything unfold from the comfort of his private study. His assistant, a no-nonsense woman named Clara, stood nearby, scrolling through updates on her tablet. "It's bad," she said finally, glancing up. "The backlash is growing. Activists are organizing boycotts, influencers are posting reaction videos, and shareholders are starting to ask questions." "Good," Elon said, leaning back in his chair. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Good? This could tank the airline's reputation." He waved her off, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Reputation is just a collection of perceptions. It's malleable. This is free advertising." Clara sighed but didn't press further. She'd learned long ago not to question his unorthodox methods. Outside Musk's inner circle, the chaos escalated. The viral footage began spawning memes. One particularly popular clip featured Elon's nonchalant "I'll leave" comment remixed into a dance track. Protest groups gathered outside airport terminals, some wearing their own red hats in solidarity, while others donned signs demanding stricter policies against political symbols. The irony was impossible to ignore. An airline owned by the world's most controversial entrepreneur was now at the center of a debate about neutrality and expression. Pundits debated Musk's potential involvement, theorizing that the incident was some elaborate scheme to test societal fault lines. Elon allowed the speculation to run its course, watching with detached amusement as the world reacted to the incident. Then, just as the narrative reached a fever pitch, he made his move. The announcement came in the form of a cryptic tweet. "Freedom means flying high. Stay tuned. Rocket Bill Cap #Freedom Flight Caps." Within minutes, the hashtag exploded. Speculation ran wild. Was it a new product? A social initiative? A publicity stunt? Musk offered no clarification, leaving his followers, and the media, hungry for answers. Behind the scenes, he had already finalized his plan. The Freedom Flight Caps would be a satirical yet powerful response to the controversy. Each cap would feature a variety of slogans, ranging from the deeply meaningful "Equality for all" to the hilariously absurd "I love pineapple pizza." The concept was simple: to turn the divisive nature of symbols into a unifying joke, a reminder of how ridiculous it was to let fabric and slogans dictate human interactions. As the caps went into production, Elon took a moment to reflect on the bigger picture. The incident wasn't just about a hat or a policy, it was about how easily society fractured over symbols. His goal wasn't to mock the seriousness of the debate but to expose its absurdity, while subtly advocating for empathy and inclusion. By the time the caps launched, the world was ready. The first batch sold out within minutes, with buyers posting photos of themselves wearing slogans like "Bananas are evil" and "Make hugs mandatory." Airlines were caught in a new dilemma as passengers started wearing the caps in defiance of existing policies. Security checkpoints became battlegrounds for free expression, with travelers arguing over the right to wear caps featuring slogans as innocuous as "Coffee is overrated." The sheer absurdity of the situation became the story. Late-night talk shows aired skits parodying the movement, while social media exploded with posts of passengers sneaking hats onto planes. A new wave of memes swept the internet, many featuring Elon's grinning face alongside slogans like, "Chaos is the plan." Through it all, Musk remained a puppet master, pulling strings from behind the curtain. The airline's executives were initially horrified by the fallout but soon realized the financial benefits. Ticket sales spiked as people booked flights just to be part of the spectacle. The airline became synonymous with controversy and profitability. Elon had turned what could have been a PR disaster into an unprecedented cultural phenomenon. And as the world argued, laughed, and debated over the caps, Musk quietly prepared for the next phase of his plan. The caps had become more than just a viral trend, they were a cultural flashpoint. Airports transformed into surreal battlegrounds of ideology, where security officers debated whether a hat reading, "Save the tacos," was a political statement, or just a culinary preference. Travelers documented these absurd moments, flooding social media with videos that blurred the line between comedy and commentary. Musk's airline, though initially criticized, was now thriving amidst the chaos. Elon himself observed this phenomenon with a mixture of amusement and fascination. He had always been a disruptor, but this was different. The caps weren't just about profit. They were a lens through which society's cracks and contradictions were magnified. Yet, he knew that chaos alone wasn't sustainable. The time had come to pivot from the joke to the message. Behind the scenes, Musk orchestrated the next phase with the precision of a chess master. His team rolled out a new campaign under the tagline, "Fly free, think free." It was bold, direct, and impossible to ignore. The campaign featured stories of everyday people wearing their freedom flight caps, a teacher advocating for inclusion, a student challenging societal norms, a farmer proudly supporting local produce. Each story tied back to a larger theme, freedom of expression without fear of judgment. The campaign struck a chord. The airline's controversial stance on hats had sparked discussions far beyond the runway. Universities hosted debates on the role of symbols in modern discourse, while workplaces reconsidered policies on personal expression. The caps became a symbol not just of defiance but of resilience, individuality, and unexpectedly unity. However, not everyone embraced this newfound cultural shift. A coalition of traditionalists, calling themselves Airways for Order, emerged, staging protests and lobbying for stricter airline policies. They argued that the caps undermined professionalism and created unnecessary tension among passengers. The debate reached a crescendo when a prominent senator publicly criticized Musk's campaign, accusing him of monetizing division. Elon's response was characteristically unorthodox. Instead of engaging in a public spat, he invited the senator to a live-stream discussion, moderated by none other than himself. The event, held in a converted hangar and streamed to millions, was billed as a dialogue on freedom. The stage was set with 2 chairs and a table, the atmosphere more casual than confrontational. Musk's approach disarmed the senator, whose prepared arguments seemed out of place in the informal setting. Elon, sipping from a mug labeled "World's Okayest CEO," opened the discussion with a question that set the tone. Why do we let symbols control us? The conversation was candid, thought-provoking, and occasionally heated. Musk's blend of humor and logic contrasted sharply with the senator's rigid rhetoric, leaving viewers torn between amusement and introspection. By the end, the senator softened her stance, admitting that while she didn't agree with Musk's methods, the broader discussion on freedom of expression was necessary. The dialogue became a turning point. Critics began to acknowledge that the controversy had prompted meaningful conversations. Advocacy groups leveraged the momentum to campaign for broader workplace inclusion, while schools incorporated discussions about personal expression into their curricula. Amidst the growing cultural shift, Elon unveiled the final piece of his campaign, the Freedom Fund. The initiative allocated a portion of the cap's sales to support grassroots organizations working on issues like equality, education, and mental health. The announcement silenced even his harshest critics, reframing the caps from a joke to a tool for tangible change. Public perception shifted once again. The caps, initially seen as divisive, now carried a deeper meaning. People who once wore them ironically began to embrace their messages genuinely. Airlines that had initially banned the caps reconsidered their policies, some even adopting Musk's "fly free, think free" philosophy as their own. Elon watched it all unfold with quiet satisfaction. The Freedom Flight caps had evolved beyond his wildest expectations, becoming a symbol of both societal absurdity and collective resilience. What had started as a small experiment on a flight had grown into a global movement, proving once again that even chaos, when directed with intent, could lead to transformation. As the Freedom Flight caps campaign continued to dominate public discourse, its ripple effects began to surface in unexpected ways. Schools started incorporating debates about symbolism and personal expression into their curriculums, using the caps as a case study. University professors cited Musk's campaign as an example of modern activism through satire, drawing parallels to historical movements that used humor and irony to challenge societal norms. Meanwhile, the airline stock soared, buoyed by the global attention and unprecedented ticket sales. Passengers who once avoided flying were now booking flights just to wear their caps and document their experiences. The airline's employees, initially caught off guard by the chaos, began embracing their role in the cultural phenomenon. Gate agents and flight attendants started wearing custom caps with slogans like, "Baggage is political," and "Fly high, stay chill." But not everyone was on board with the movement. The opposition, now more organized, intensified their efforts to discredit the campaign. A coalition of influential figures launched a smear campaign, accusing Musk of trivializing serious issues and exploiting societal divisions for personal gain. They pointed to the absurd slogans on some caps as evidence that the entire campaign was a mockery. Elon, true to form, responded with a tweet. "Mockery is a mirror. What you see in it says more about you than the mirror itself. #FreedomFlightCaps." The tweet, cryptic and provocative, reignited debates. Some hailed Musk as a genius who used satire to spark meaningful conversations. Others saw him as a provocateur who thrived on controversy. Either way, the campaign continued to dominate headlines, refusing to fade into the background. At the same time, an underground market for counterfeit caps began to thrive. From knockoff Freedom caps, sold on street corners, to luxury versions adorned with rhinestones and gold embroidery, the caps became a global sensation. Musk, ever the opportunist, decided to lean into the chaos. Instead of cracking down on counterfeits, he launched a line of official knockoffs, complete with intentionally misspelled slogans like "Freedom Flight Caps." The move was a stroke of genius. By embracing the absurdity, Musk further blurred the line between parody and purpose. Sales of the official knockoffs skyrocketed, and the profits were funneled directly into the Freedom Fund. The initiative now supported hundreds of grassroots organizations, from mentorship programs in underserved communities to initiatives promoting diversity and inclusion in workplaces. As the Freedom Fund gained traction, so did the stories of those it impacted. A single mother in Chicago used a scholarship funded by caps sales to return to school and start her own business. A group of high school students in rural Texas organized a cultural exchange program after being inspired by the campaign's message. These stories, shared widely on social media, gave the caps a newfound gravitas. Elon's role in the movement evolved as well. No longer just the mastermind behind the campaign, he became a mentor to young activists and entrepreneurs. Through a series of virtual town halls, he shared his vision of a world where symbols were tools for connection rather than division. The town halls, informal and filled with Musk's characteristic wit, drew millions of viewers and further solidified his status as both a disruptor and a visionary. Despite the progress, challenges remained. The opposition continued to push back, accusing Musk of using philanthropy to deflect criticism. Skeptics questioned whether the campaign's impact was truly lasting or just another fleeting trend. Musk, unbothered by the noise, stayed focused on the bigger picture. The turning point came when a major airline competitor publicly announced a policy change inspired by Musk's campaign. They unveiled a new initiative promoting inclusivity and personal expression, citing the Freedom Flight caps as a catalyst. The announcement was met with both praise and skepticism, but it marked a significant shift in the industry. For Musk, it wasn't about being credited. It was about proving a point that even in a world consumed by division and outrage, transformation was possible. The caps, once dismissed as a joke, had become a symbol of resilience, advocacy, and growth. As the movement gained momentum, Elon reflected on how far it had come. What started as a playful response to a ridiculous incident had grown into something much bigger, a testament to the power of humor, irony, and unapologetic leadership. For Musk, it was never just about the caps. It was about what they represented, the idea that even the smallest symbols, when wielded with intent, could inspire change. The controversy took a new turn as major news outlets began dissecting the unintended consequences of the Freedom Flight caps phenomenon. A popular investigative report showcased how airports, overwhelmed by the influx of travelers flaunting the caps, were struggling to maintain order. TSA agents found themselves in absurd debates over whether a hat reading, "Make burritos great again," was a security concern. Meanwhile, flight delays increased as passengers staged impromptu protests over perceived discrimination when asked to remove their caps. For Elon, these developments were both amusing and an opportunity. While critics framed the disruptions as evidence of his campaign's recklessness, Musk saw them as growing pains for a society grappling with its own contradictions. He doubled down, launching a new initiative called Cap Chronicles, a platform for people to share their personal stories and experiences related to the caps. The platform quickly became a sensation, flooded with anecdotes ranging from the hilarious to the heartwarming. One story in particular captured the public's attention: a young girl whose "dream big" cap was confiscated during a school field trip for being political. Her tearful account of standing up to the teacher became a rallying cry for freedom of expression, with supporters raising funds to send her on a private trip to the museum she had missed. Musk personally contributed, inviting her to visit SpaceX headquarters for an exclusive tour. While the Cap Chronicles humanized the movement, the opposition also grew more sophisticated. A coordinated effort by detractors aimed to discredit the campaign by highlighting instances where the caps were used to promote divisive or harmful messages. Social media was flooded with images of counterfeit caps bearing offensive slogans, prompting heated debates about the line between free expression and hate speech. Musk's response was calculated. Rather than issuing a blanket condemnation, he hosted a live Q&A session, addressing the controversy directly. He acknowledged the challenges of balancing freedom with responsibility, emphasizing that while the campaign celebrated individuality, it was never an excuse for harm. His openness resonated with many, reframing the narrative and diffusing some of the criticism. Meanwhile, the airline began implementing changes to adapt to its new reality. Training programs were introduced to help staff navigate the complexities of the cap phenomenon. Employees were encouraged to embrace empathy and creativity in resolving conflicts, transforming what could have been a source of tension into an opportunity for connection. Some employees even became minor celebrities, their diplomatic handling of viral incidents earning praise online. The transformation wasn't limited to the airline. Businesses and organizations across industries began rethinking their own policies on expression and individuality. A prominent tech company reversed its ban on political apparel, citing Musk's campaign as inspiration. Educational institutions adopted more nuanced approaches to teaching about freedom and accountability. The caps, once a symbol of absurdity, were now driving tangible change in unexpected ways. Despite these victories, the campaign faced its most significant challenge yet when a major legal battle emerged. A passenger who had been denied boarding for refusing to remove a cap bearing a controversial slogan filed a lawsuit against the airline. The case quickly gained national attention, with both sides framing it as a pivotal moment for freedom of expression. The trial became a media spectacle, with legal experts debating the implications of the outcome. Musk, while not directly involved, kept a close eye on the proceedings. The stakes were high, not just for his airline but for the broader movement the caps represented. In court, The airline's legal team argued that the no-politics policy was essential for maintaining a neutral and safe environment for all passengers. The plaintiff's lawyers countered that the policy was inconsistently enforced and inherently discriminatory. The proceedings were tense, with both sides presenting compelling arguments and testimony. Musk, ever the strategist, used the trial as an opportunity to reinforce the campaign's core message. He launched a series of thought-provoking advertisements, each posing questions about freedom, responsibility, and the role of symbols in society. The ads didn't take a side but instead encouraged viewers to engage with the issues on their own terms. When the verdict finally came, it was a mixed outcome. The court ruled that while the airline had the right to enforce its policies, it needed to ensure they were applied consistently and transparently. The decision sparked renewed debates but ultimately strengthened the campaign's credibility by highlighting the importance of accountability. The trial marked a turning point, solidifying the freedom flight caps movement as more than just a fleeting trend. It was now a cultural force, challenging norms and inspiring conversations about the complexities of individuality and inclusion. For Musk, it was a validation of his belief that even chaos, when approached with purpose, could lead to meaningful transformation. As the movement gained further traction, unexpected alliances began to form across ideological and cultural divides. Individuals who had once stood on opposite sides of the debate found themselves drawn together by a shared appreciation for the campaign's complexity. The freedom flight caps had become more than symbols. They were catalysts for dialogue, forcing people to confront their assumptions and biases in ways they hadn't anticipated. A notable example emerged from a grassroots collaboration between activists from opposing political factions. Inspired by the campaign's emphasis on freedom and accountability, they organized a community event called the Cap Summit. Held in a neutral location, the summit invited participants to share their stories and perspectives while wearing caps that represented their personal beliefs. The event was a surprising success, with attendees describing it as a rare space for honest and respectful exchange. Elon, ever the observer, watched the summit unfold with a mixture of amusement and pride. Though he didn't attend in person, he sent a custom cap for the occasion, embroidered with the words, "Let's talk, not yell." The cap quickly became a viral symbol of the event's ethos, prompting Musk to release a limited edition line of dialogue caps. Proceeds were directed toward funding similar summits in other communities. The airline, now deeply intertwined with the cultural movement, leaned into its role as a platform for advocacy. They introduced themed flights where passengers could participate in workshops, discussions, and even live performances centered around topics of diversity, inclusion, and resilience. These flights, dubbed Freedom Journeys, attracted widespread attention and were fully booked within hours of their announcement. Yet the movement wasn't without its detractors. Critics argued that the campaign had veered too far into idealism, losing sight of its original satirical roots. They questioned whether Musk's initiatives were genuine or simply another layer of his carefully constructed persona. Social media was rife with debates over whether the campaign was creating meaningful change or merely perpetuating a cycle of performative activism. Musk, as always, responded with his signature blend of humor and candor. In a widely shared interview, he addressed the criticism head-on, admitting that not every aspect of the campaign had gone according to plan. "It's messy," he said with a shrug. "But so is life. The point isn't perfection, it's progress." His words resonated with many, reinforcing the campaign's underlying message of embracing imperfection as a path to growth. Stories from the Cap Chronicles continued to pour in, showcasing how the caps were impacting lives in unexpected ways. A veteran shared how his Hope Soars cap helped him reconnect with his estranged daughter. A teacher described how a classroom debate about the caps led her students to develop greater empathy for one another. Amid the ongoing discourse, Musk unveiled his next bold move, a documentary chronicling the rise of the freedom flight caps movement. Titled Under the Brim, the film offered an unfiltered look at the campaign's highs and lows, from the initial airport incident to the cultural phenomenon it had become. Featuring interviews with supporters, critics, and those directly impacted by the movement, the documentary aimed to capture the campaign's complexity without sugarcoating its controversies. The release of Under the Brim was met with both acclaim and controversy. Critics praised its raw honesty and thought-provoking narrative, while detractors accused it of being a self-serving project. Despite the polarized reception, the documentary achieved its goal of reigniting conversations about the campaign's broader implications. Behind the scenes, the Freedom Fund continued to expand its reach, supporting initiatives that aligned with the campaign's values. One of its most ambitious projects was the establishment of the Brim Institute, a think tank dedicated to exploring the intersections of freedom, accountability, and cultural transformation. The institute hosted conferences, published research, and provided grants for innovative projects, solidifying its role as a hub for thought leadership. As the movement matured, so did its participants. Those who had initially joined out of curiosity or amusement found themselves deeply invested in its mission. Influencers and public figures who had once jumped on the bandwagon for clout began using their platforms to advocate for meaningful change. The caps, once seen as quirky accessories, had become emblems of a collective journey toward empathy and understanding. Elon, though still at the helm, began taking a step back from the spotlight, allowing others to shape the movement's future. He focused on mentoring the next generation of leaders, using his experiences as a guide. The caps were just the beginning, he told a group of young activists during a virtual town hall. What comes next is up to you. The sentiment echoed throughout the movement, inspiring participants to carry the campaign's values into their own lives and communities. For many, the caps represented not just a moment in history but a reminder of what was possible when people embraced both their individuality and their shared humanity. As the airline prepared to celebrate the campaign's anniversary, it was clear that the Freedom Flight caps had become more than a cultural flashpoint. They were a testament to resilience, adaptability, and the power of unlikely ideas to spark transformation. For Musk, it wasn't about the hats, it was about the heads and hearts they had touched along the way. The anniversary of the Freedom Flight caps campaign was marked with an air of both celebration and reflection. Across the world, people shared memories of how the movement had impacted their lives, recounting stories that ranged from humorous encounters to profound personal growth. It was a moment of unity, but also a chance to take stock of the challenges and controversies that had shaped its journey. Elon Musk, typically playful and unpredictable, surprised everyone by releasing an open letter to the public. In it, he reflected on the campaign's origins, admitting that even he couldn't have predicted how far it would go. What started as a comedy of errors became a global conversation, he wrote. Not because of me, but because of all of you who saw something in it worth fighting for. The letter struck a chord, setting the tone for a day filled with tributes and discussions. Major cities hosted public events, many organized independently by community groups inspired by the campaign. In New York, a massive art installation showcased hundreds of Freedom Flight caps, each representing a unique story submitted through the Cap Chronicles platform. In Tokyo, a symposium brought together thought leaders from various fields to discuss the broader implications of freedom and accountability in modern society. One of the most striking moments came when a coalition of activists unveiled the results of a year-long study analyzing the campaign's impact. The findings were a mix of successes and lessons learned. On one hand, the campaign had sparked significant cultural shifts, encouraging more open conversations about individuality and expression. On the other, it revealed persistent challenges in addressing prejudice and inequality, underscoring the need for continued efforts. For the airline, the anniversary presented an opportunity to solidify its reputation as more than a carrier. It was now seen as a facilitator of change. They announced new initiatives aimed at fostering inclusion and empathy, including scholarships for underrepresented groups pursuing careers in aviation and hospitality. The programs were met with widespread support, showcasing how the company had embraced its role as a leader in cultural transformation. Yet, not everyone was in a celebratory mood. Critics resurfaced, questioning whether the campaign had truly made a lasting impact, or if it was merely a passing trend. Some pointed to instances where the caps had been co-opted for divisive purposes, arguing that the campaign's message had been diluted. Others accused Musk of using the movement to distract from unrelated controversies surrounding his other ventures. Musk's response was, as usual, both candid and strategic. In a live-streamed conversation with journalists, he addressed the criticisms directly, acknowledging the imperfections of the campaign while emphasizing its broader significance. "Nothing meaningful comes without friction," he said. "The point isn't to erase the disagreements but to learn from them and keep moving forward." The live stream became an instant viral sensation, with viewers praising Musk's willingness to engage in difficult conversations. His words reignited interest in the campaign, prompting a new wave of discussions about its legacy. Social media lit up with hashtags celebrating the anniversary, while influencers and public figures shared their own experiences with the caps. Among the many voices was a group of young activists who had been inspired by the movement to launch their own initiatives. They spoke passionately about how the campaign had taught them the importance of resilience and adaptability, citing Musk's unconventional approach as a source of inspiration. Their stories added a layer of depth to the narrative, highlighting how the caps had become a symbol of hope for the next generation. The day culminated in a global broadcast event featuring performances, speeches, and a retrospective documentary produced by the Brim Institute. The documentary, titled Beyond the Brim, delved into the campaign's evolution, exploring its highs and lows with unflinching honesty. It included interviews with everyone from airline employees to cultural critics, painting a comprehensive picture of a movement that defied expectations at every turn. One particularly moving segment focused on a small-town community that had been deeply divided along political lines before the campaign began. Through a series of local events inspired by the Freedom Flight Caps, they had managed to bridge their differences and create a more inclusive environment. Their journey was a testament to the campaign's potential to spark real change, even in the most unlikely places. As the broadcast drew to a close, Musk made a surprise appearance, delivering a brief but heartfelt message. Standing on a windswept runway, wearing a plain black cap emblazoned with the word "Together," he spoke directly to the camera. "This was never about me," he said. "It was about us, all of us, learning to listen, to grow, and to find common ground. The caps were just the beginning. The real work is what we do next." His words resonated across screens, leaving viewers with a sense of both closure and anticipation. The Freedom Flight Caps movement had come full circle, from its chaotic inception to its cultural impact, and now stood as a symbol of transformation and hope. It was a reminder that even the simplest ideas, when approached with courage and creativity, could inspire profound change. As the night sky lit up with celebratory fireworks in cities around the world, it was clear that the campaign's legacy would endure. For Musk, it wasn't about the fame or the controversy. It was about proving that even in a divided world, there was always room for connection and understanding, one cap at a time. The fallout from the anniversary celebrations lingered, but it wasn't the usual kind of controversy that Elon Musk had become accustomed to. This time, there was a renewed sense of purpose and collective will behind the movement. The Freedom Flight Caps had evolved into something more than a satire, more than a mere cultural quirk. They had become a tangible force for societal change, sparking conversations on freedom, accountability, and the role of personal expression in a fractured world. Despite the overwhelming success, the movement wasn't immune to criticism. Detractors began to accuse Musk of co-opting serious social issues for commercial gain. They questioned whether the message of unity and inclusion could truly resonate when it had originated from such an unconventional, and in some cases, controversial, figure. They pointed to the advertising campaigns that had turned the caps into a profitable product line, suggesting that it undermined the spirit of the movement. Musk's response was uncharacteristically somber. Rather than brushing off the critiques with humor or deflection, he acknowledged the validity of the concerns. "I never imagined it would go this far," he said during a press briefing. "It was supposed to be a joke at first, but then it became something bigger, something we all had a hand in shaping. If some of that comes with complications, then we have to deal with them." His vulnerability resonated with many. Even those who had once viewed the movement as a shallow publicity stunt began to recognize its deeper value. The controversy surrounding the commercial success of the caps forced everyone to re-examine their assumptions about what activism and progress could look like in a modern, consumer-driven society. Could a campaign be both profitable and meaningful? Could it challenge the status quo while still playing by the rules of capitalism? In a twist that nobody saw coming, Musk announced a groundbreaking partnership with social justice organizations to launch a new initiative called Caps for Change. The project aimed to provide financial support to grassroots activists working on the front lines of social justice, while also creating opportunities for disenfranchised communities to engage in meaningful dialogues around freedom and accountability. The initiative's centerpiece was a new line of caps, designed collaboratively with activists from around the world. Each design would reflect the unique struggles and triumphs of different communities, with all proceeds going directly toward funding social justice efforts. This move was met with cautious optimism by many in the activist community. Some expressed doubt about Musk's true intentions, questioning whether this was merely another PR maneuver. But others saw it as a genuine attempt to use his influence for good, acknowledging that the campaign had already prompted much-needed conversations on difficult topics. For Musk, this was more than just a business move. It was an opportunity to redeem himself in the eyes of those who had written him off as a self-serving billionaire. The initiative wasn't just about his legacy, it was about creating a lasting, positive impact on society. He enlisted a team of mentors, including seasoned activists and thought leaders, to guide the project and ensure that it stayed true to its mission. As the campaign unfolded, the public's perception of Musk began to shift. No longer viewed solely as a billionaire tech mogul, he was now seen by many as a complicated figure, one who was capable of both controversy and growth. People saw him as someone who could inspire change, but also be deeply flawed in the process. His willingness to confront his own shortcomings was a refreshing contrast to the usual tactics of wealthy elites who sought only to protect their image. The Caps for Change initiative went on to raise millions of dollars, funding a range of projects aimed at empowering marginalized communities. The success of the program wasn't just measured in financial terms, it also created real, measurable change. In one notable example, a youth program focused on increasing representation in the arts received funding to build a community arts center in an underserved neighborhood. The center became a hub for creativity and expression, providing resources to young people who had previously lacked access to such opportunities. As the movement continued to grow, it became clear that the impact of the Freedom Flight caps would outlive the campaign itself. The program had sparked a larger conversation about the role of corporate influence in social movements, and how individuals and organizations could work together to create a more inclusive and empathetic world. The caps, once a symbol of divisiveness, had evolved into a symbol of hope and transformation. They represented the ongoing journey toward unity in a world increasingly defined by polarization. The movement wasn't without its flaws, but it had demonstrated that even the most unlikely of ideas could serve as a catalyst for change. Musk, now more reflective than ever, realized that the true test of the movement's success wasn't the hats or the campaigns, it was the lasting impact on the lives of the people it had touched. As the project continued to fund initiatives across the globe, it became clear that the caps had transformed into something much larger than their original concept. They had become a tool for creating real, positive change, proving that even in a world of deep divisions, there was always room for progress. For Musk, the final message was clear. It wasn't about the hat, the company, or the brand, it was about what was done with the platform. The legacy of the Freedom Flight caps would forever be a testament to the power of embracing imperfection, making amends, and most importantly, learning from the past to create a better future.